Hello, everyone. Welcome to Symbaroum. I join you now with only 4 hours sleep and 2 weeks late from our latest scheduled Symbaroum session. But we're here now. It's all good. Symbaroum is back. We're back, baby, with more dark fantasy stylings from the wonderful tabletop role-playing game from Fria Ligan. Hi. Isn't this nice? So, welcome back. Down below, there's all the promo I'm going to start shilling to you. We've got a bunch of links down there. Some are to Twitch and to YouTube. You're watching this on one of those sites. Why not check out the other and give us a follow, a subscribe, a like, and all those other arcane things of no real value that nevertheless help us out. There's links to our social media, to our Discord, to our Patreon. All those things do what all those things generally do. And if you're interested in them, please do have a look. We've got quite a popular little Discord now with nice people chatting about nice things, mostly role-playing oriented. We've got a Patreon offering some lovely treats. We had like an unboxing video this week from Johnny and some character creation stuff. We've got some GM notes coming up. We finally got me walking you guys through that collection of role-playing games back there. Lots of different bits and pieces, so check those out if they sound interesting. We also run 3 weekly series, each of them starting at 8 o'clock in the evening GMT. Mondays is Johnny's crew with Shadows of Esterin. Wednesdays is obviously this, Symbaroum. And Thursdays, which is only really just started, we're 2 sessions in at the moment, is my somewhat ambitious World of Darkness anthology series. We're still in that first arc, still with Vampire the Masquerade, but it's going very nicely. Everyone's having a lot of grimdark gothic punk fun, so that's pretty good. You should join us for it. We also run a one-shot on the first Saturday of every month. And we've had quite a few of them through the year for various different systems. You can check them all out on our YouTube. But recently we ran a poll to see which one people wanted a sequel to for the last one-shot of the year. And they voted for the first one we ever did, which is the wonderful Alien system, also from Fria Ligan. And we ran a story earlier this year called A Place of Burning. And now on, I think at the moment, Sunday the 5th of December, we should be running a sequel to that, imaginatively under the working title of A Place of Burning 2. And it should be carrying the same crew as well, the same crew from the first one. I think everyone's in. So, yeah, if that sounds like a good time to you, then please do join us for that. And speaking of joining us, what a segue. Let's start introducing the players and running through a bit of a recap, because it's been a little while since we visited Ambria and Symbaroum and Davokar and all that stuff. So let's roll them in one by one and they can talk us through what happened last time. Although we're going to start, for a confusing reason that's none of your business, we're going to start with Stephen, who isn't going to run us through a recap. Essentially, we had a recap plan for last week where Stephen wasn't going to be with us, and then also we didn't end up doing it. I told you it wasn't any of your business, and now you're regretting asking. Hi, Stephen.
Hello. This is going wonderfully already, isn't it?
This is an intro I'm enjoying, which is always worse than the ones I think I'm fucking up, but that's fine. Hi, Stephen. Are you excited to be back in Symbaroum?
I am. I think we're just getting into the spoilers. We're just getting into the sinkhole. Which I'm sure the other players will get to in their own sweet time, but it's kind of it's been the focus of the adventure up until this point, so it feels like we're finally kind of
both kind of a focal point, but also on the side a little bit, I think, which is an interesting way for it to revolve around.
Lots of investigations around the hole and the circumstances and people relating to the hole, but now we are
definitely. Now we're down there again. Stephen plays Alindra, a novice or former Templar novice, now given to swinging her sword around for money rather than the glory of Prios. So I'm sure there'll be nothing down the sinkhole for Alindra to carve up with that.
I'm not
slightly sorcerous blade.
Not expecting any trouble. No, just
smooth sailing.
Smooth
sailing. So let's bring on our next player to actually start our recap from last time. Let's bring on Sam. Sam plays Askarai, our changeling ranger. Hi, Sam. Good to have you back. why don't you tell us how things kicked off last time?
It's good to be back. I'm glad I haven't been kicked out yet. We started off with just, well, I say we had just caught up to this kind of member of the Mother Mahira's agency, but really he had been killed by an elf who was sat on a roof and who'd just thrown a throwing axe into his head. And we spoke to this elf a little bit, and basically he was typically unhelpful for an elf, but did at least he kind of indicated that we'd become somewhat known. We had a target painted on our backs a little bit, but mostly through one cult rather than all cults, but just that cults seemingly band together and try to help each other out, at least in terms of killing us.
Yeah, it's quite sweet, really, apart from that it's to kill you and further the cause of darkness.
Yeah. It might take a while for us to see it that way, but yes.
Yes.
And then I don't think we got too much more out of him. We didn't get his name. He was quite harsh and blasé about the death of Anadea, who he knew of, but just said that she failed and didn't really care that she had died.
No.
He told us to seek the red eye, which means absolutely nothing to us, I think.
Of course, but what would an episode of Symbaroum be without an obscure bit of puzzly nonsense? Yeah, you may have also mentioned, but of course he dropped that he is a member of the Iron Pact. That's a kind of conglomeration of mostly elves who are trying to keep the Ambrians out of the forest of Davakar to try and restrain the darkness that dwells within there. And then I believe we mentioned the guy who got murdered at the beginning, as you say, the member of the agency, who was also a cult leader. And then I believe you had a bit of a delve in his house, which went really well.
Yeah, I think Alphonse had already looked around the house and concluded that nothing particularly worth finding for us, but definite evidence of cult-like activities in the basement, and basically advised everyone to not go down there. We eventually took the guy's body back. What his name was? Beginning with A.
Erok, right?
Erok, nearly an A. Yeah. We took Erok's body back to his house just to leave it there as a simpler crime scene. We considered taking the throwing axe, but we didn't in the end. And I think Elindra and Askrai did go down into this basement, and basically after Alphonse had left, and basically found horrible kind of ritualistic torture and murder of people down there, but nothing of evidence other than that. Nothing of like a clue beyond the fact that clearly he was a cult leader.
Yeah, it wasn't a nice place. And I think you ended up kind of wishing maybe that you'd followed Irfon's advice not to go down there.
Yeah.
But regardless, we moved on, and it became very quickly apparent that your plans for the next day or so had been made for you. And why don't we bring on our next player, John? John plays Arendar, last scion of House Dar. All-around duelist and nice fellow who's found himself wrapped up in one awkward situation too many so far in this story and in our previous spin-off story, Fetters of Stone. Go check that out on YouTube. Smooth stuff. John, what happened next?
So next we did what the gang often do, which is go to the pub and talk things over. And while there and catching up with the pub landlord, found out that we, or rather everyone else, had been the subject of a rather aggressive marketing campaign while we were at the city, basically saying that tomorrow morning the heroes of Thistlehold are going to go down into the sinkhole and solve everything. There were brief discussions about whether we should just run away, But in the end, seeing as how there's Ordo Magica money behind it, they decided to go down the sinkhole in the morning, and I would tag along and try and get signed up.
Yeah, absolutely. Who wouldn't want to go down into that sinkhole from which the Beast Clan poured forth and slaughtered a great many of the inhabitants of Thistlehold? Sounds like a blast.
It's a way to spend the morning.
Absolutely, and that morning did arrive, and let's bring on our next player, Chris, to talk about it. Chris plays Steo, former infantryman, former city guard, and now fully fledged treasure hunter, mercenary, and curmudgeonly doomsayer. How did that morning start, Chris?
I'm actually delighted I got this segment, because this, I think, is where all of the intrigue happened, at least from my perspective. So we rocked up to find a very ill-looking Night Pitch, I think this was at this time, giving a speech about working the crowd excellently, getting them into a fevered state for the hero's descent. The heroes in this case were a large contingent from basically all the kind of stakeholders in Thistlehold. So a group of the Ordo Magica, ourselves, Serix Atio, great news, everyone. The guy who wants us dead is here. And who else do we have? We had the first Theurg and a bunch of other Theurgs who aren't initiates. So be looking forward to seeing them kick some butt. And we also had the Mare Night Pitch's consort, the witch lady Ugaba, who was being kind of somewhat shunned by everyone else, and thus was.
Sorry, yeah, I think the only other Captain Marvello and some city guard were also accompanying,
and a couple of city guard as well. But
it's an expedition for sure.
I went straight up to Ugabo and.
Sorry, it's Yagaba. Sorry,
Yagaba. Apologies, I'm really bad at names. And just mentioned to her that we're very glad to have her along, and kind of exchanged the understanding that this is our investigation, perhaps relates to the corruption and not just the what's down the bottom of this hole, lads, situation. Aside from that, there was just some circumstantial evidence that I read into too much, but I'm very much looking forward to seeing borne out in future encounters, where Serix Atio and the first Theurg seem to be in cahoots, or at least going down the ropes at the same time. But I think that's about it.
Yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. And then, you descended down into the sinkhole below Thistlehold. And let's bring on our final player, Mike. Mike plays Anton, Theurg of Prios, holy man, sort of missionary, sort of flailer, and harbinger of the ever terrible dice roll. Hi, Mike. How are you doing? And how did it go down in that sinkhole?
It went okay for now. We basically descended into the sinkhole and did like an initial kind of exploratory search of this cavern. We found quite a lot of debris, I guess, which is all the buildings and stuff that was previously what this block of the city was. And then we found some passageways that are sort of like leading off the cavern. We've got one to the north, we've got one to the south, and then we've got two to the west, and they have like a kind of a stream kind of like going through them. Like that's like seems to be what's channeled and
absolutely
carved out the.
While we're talking about the layout, why don't we replace this wonderfully handsome picture of Anton with obviously Mike actually did this map, but in our TTRPG kayfabe, it is Anton's map.
Yeah, don't give Anton any of the credit for this. I will take all the plaudits. We've got sort of two watery passageways to the left, or to the west, to use some actually accurate geographical language, and one to the east. And it seems that the water is flowing from the east. There was some like talk of like a sort of a minerally taste to the water, a minerally smell coming from that eastern passageway, I think it was.
Yeah, and I believe one of the city guard actually tried the water and briefly duped everyone into thinking she was transforming in some kind of abomination, but it turned out to be a hilarious joke.
Yeah. Really lightened the mood.
Yeah.
And we haven't yet decided where we want to investigate yet, but I think at the very end of the session, there were some noises that were heard by certain members of the party. I've got a feeling that Ascarai noticed a rustling noise to the east.
Yeah.
One of the passageway there. And I think at one of the passageways to the west, Elindra heard a faint singing sound.
Yeah, a sound that might be singing, if that wasn't such a ludicrous and spooky thing to hear down here. Probably misheard it. It's probably fine. So there we go. That was our recap. It may have been a bit chunky, folks, but we needed to remind ourselves after a couple of weeks off as well. So hopefully that wasn't too much for you. And let's crack on with it, shall we? So I think it's safe to say perhaps that the expedition as a whole has regrouped near the point where they came down those ropes onto that massive scree pile in the center of the cavern. And I think it's fair to say that perhaps you guys, together with Yagaba, Marvello, the first Theurg, Elfano, and maybe the two kind of Ordo Magica masters, Furia and oh my god, there's so many NPCs, you guys. She's literally the one who's been in this the most as well, and just vanished from my brain. Euphrinda, thank you so much. Again, I say 4 hours sleep. So I think it's fair to say perhaps that you're all huddled and maybe talking about, what the next steps might be. And I'm happy for you guys to kind of take the lead on it, because I think Marvello at least has kind of definitely deferred to your experience in going into these places, such as it is.
Before we jump in, Matt, because I think we just got to the mapping at the end of the session. Yeah. With regards to the sort of east-west river, that's a natural feature, right?
It certainly does seem to be. Yeah, it seems to be worn into the ground of the.
Is it big enough to walk down? Like, are they?
I mean, it is big enough to walk over at this and walk in at this stage. It's only about maybe ankle deep, and it's.
But I mean, the tunnels they come out of, like, is that?
Yeah. All those passageways are like big enough to comfortably fit. A couple of them maybe you'd have to go single file, but like all of them can be, explored. Yes.
Am I right in thinking that we'd done some kind of like lore master test and all the passages seemed natural?
Yeah, the cavern itself and all the passages all seemed like a natural spaces in the rock.
Okay.
So is someone going to inform us about the spooky signs, because not all of us can make perception rolls?
I will have mentioned probably before we got back to the center that I heard some kind of rustling noise without being too able to identify exactly what it was.
Yeah, I heard something to the west that might have been singing or might have been my imagination.
And obviously, like the passageways being underground like this, obviously sounds can warp considerably.
So I think the obvious choice then is to head further north, but a little bit of investigation down these side tunnels might prove fruitful.
Yeah, if whatever caused the sinkhole came from Davakar, then it's reasonable to assume it came from the north. And that those north-south caves, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but those north-south caves don't look like river caves.
Correct. They do look natural, but yeah, they don't look. I mean, there's no water running through them right now. So,
yeah.
My only other thought is perhaps this water flows from or near the source of the well. which we know to also be some point of interest for what caused this sinkhole.
In terms of where my own curiosity lies, I'd love to know what lies beneath that ancient thing.
I thought the well was like southwest of here. There would have to be.
Southeast.
Correct. Just testing. Yeah.
Because it's sort of
think-
south central
Yeah.
Thistlehold, whereas this is northwest Thistlehold, where you are.
It is. It doesn't seem that the passages lead directly there, but we're
Yeah,
underground,
I mean,
and they could easily change
maybe
direction.
the path of the water turns around. Maybe it's completely unrelated. We don't know.
Maybe so. Anyway, I think having more information about the situation is better than just storming up the north path and hoping for the best. So I propose we go and take a look under the well, which I assume is going to be toward the source of this underground water.
Just as a question to throw out to the group, when we fought the beasts from the sinkhole before, did anyone notice if they appeared to be wet? Had they emerged from water?
I'll gladly give you this information. You fought enough of them to be able to see that. The answer is no.
Okay.
I don't recall, Anton, but what I do recall, at least maybe I'm imagining it now in this situation, is that they departed to the north. But I still think we go take the east path first. You're on mute, Matt, but I see your agreement.
That is correct. When you saw them move away down at the bottom of the sinkhole, and when you saw presumably their leader kind of swoop away on the bat wings that she unexpectedly had, it was to the north.
And let us remember, this is not an assault. This is an investigation. So information is key, I think.
Okay. The river, both to the east and west, could come from and go to places that are way outside of Thistlehold. How far up and down those passages are you suggesting that we go? City limits?
Yeah, I think city limits would be the maximum.
Okay.
I mean, we know there's a well underneath one of them, so maybe we'll just find a bucket on a chain and call it a day, but I suspect there might be something Symbaric.
That's not my understanding of the geography, Theo. We know that there is a well within city limits. We don't for sure know whether this river runs through it.
Yeah, it's a guess. I'm no geographer. Shall we
Would
set
be
out?
interesting to know. Yeah.
So east, upstream.
I think so. You're on mute again. Wow, twice.
Mute again. The general consensus among the group, because I didn't want to throw a load of NPCs talking into that, is kind of Elfano seems pretty much happy to follow kind of your lead. He's just kind of nodding along and very visibly listening carefully to what you're saying. The two Ordo Magica masters are kind of just talking amongst themselves over something you're not sure about. Sarek Zatio is stood to one side, just ignoring you, and as he has said, if you basically ignore him, he'll ignore you while down here. And Marvello is happy to follow your lead, and as soon as you started talking maybe we should strike out in this direction, he kind of nodded and stood up and tightened his belt up and slung his shield over one shoulder. So yes. That's another character with you we forgot as well, is Ganderald, the adept of the Ordo Magica, who's down here taking notes. And unless you want to do any different, I think that the group that sets out towards the east will just be the group that set out before mapping, which means we've got a couple of Theurgs and a guard or two back at the kind of camp to sort of hold that position, so you've got a way to get back up to the surface if you need to do it in a hurry. But otherwise, the lion's share of the group, which I think we determined is maybe 12 or so people. If one of you could calculate that for me, that would be good, just so I have a number in my head. Set off down the scree pile again towards the east, and as Alindra so correctly said, upriver. You reach the bottom of the scree pile. You're kind of moving forward with that system of, I think we talked about kind of planting torches it's like certain distances along the way. You find yourself again at that sort of shallow, slow-running stream in the gully in the ground, very but quickly and easily, and you just follow it east to the edges of this huge cavern that you found yourself in, and you find yourself at that passageway leading into the east. And it is kind of one of the wider passages that you encountered on your way round. You can kind of walk through it about 3 abreast. Most of the ground is like there's a kind of widening, and most of the ground is sort of gently running water about kind of a couple of inches deep. So you're kind of going to have to squelch your way forward through that if you want to strike up to the east.
Yeah. See no problem with that.
Yeah, fine.
Sure.
Do we have some? Before we go in, I want to figure out logistical stuff, right? Do we have any lengths of rope with us here in the sinkhole? And
yes.
Do we know how long the rope is?
Probably not unless you unfurled it. But you certainly have like copious kind of expeditionary equipment, which is carried. You know, the guards are carrying some. The Gandaral is carrying some. You yourselves are carrying some. I think it's safe to say most reasonable things you'd want will be available to you, unless you want them in ridiculous quantities.
Okay. I'm trying to estimate if we head in a straight line here, how far until we hit city limits. I'm looking at a map and we're like, that's a lot. It's like 500 meters or something. I guess we don't have that much rope, but yeah. Well, I'll if we pick out the longest rope that we can find, tie it off somewhere on some rubble or whatever before we go up the passage, and I will unfurl it as we go along as a guide rope back, and also as a kind of rudimentary way of measuring.
Sure.
How far we might have gone.
I think that's perfectly reasonable. So let's start by saying that you would estimate that the distance from the scree pile to the eastern edge of the cavern is probably about 100 meters. I'm happy for you to just kind of figure that out, because you can see a bit more with the light spreading a bit further around you in the kind of height of the cavern. But as soon as you reach the passageway, it definitely becomes more difficult to estimate that distance, even with like winding a rope out and counting it. And as you kind of wade up that shallow path of water, which obviously, like, because it's coming towards you, it's kind of running over the front of your boots and maybe up a bit and soaking your feet. But it is quite warm and becoming even more pleasantly warm as you're walking up there. And Alindra, you know what? I think it's a cunning roll for you to kind of properly grasp distances here.
But
I'll give you, I think you've got a very good tool to do it. So I'll give you a +4 on the check if you want.
Cunning +4.
And also, if you want someone to help you, I'll give you an extra plus for that as well if you want.
Yeah, that's what Ganderald's for, isn't it? Oh no, he's hanging back, isn't he?
He's taking notes, and Tom is drawing a map. So I'd say not them, but pretty much anyone else. I think you could at least ask to help you.
To at least sort of explain what I'm doing with the rope and
yeah.
Yes, I mean, I'll tell people.
Sure.
You know, this will be our guide right back. I'd like to know how far we've
In that
gone.
case, Marvello assigns you an older guard woman who seems quite sensible and quite practical, and she kind of helps you. She does, in fact, she has a small kind of a little eating blade, like a fruit knife, and she doesn't cut through the rope, but she notches it every time she paces out about 10 paces. So go ahead and take a +6 to that roll, please.
+6. That's a 1.
That's
Ooh.
a 1. All right.
Yes.
Given that success, I'm going to say your system that you've got between you and this guard is so good, I'm not going to ask you to roll again. So through this session today, I'm just going to give you and these will be my estimates because the map has a scale, but, I am just kind of eyeballing it.
Essentially, how deep are we into the cavern until we run out of rope?
Sure.
We will at some point.
Absolutely. Well, what you find yourselves doing is going about 250 meters to the east along this kind of wet passageway until opening up ahead of you is again a larger cavern. As you're walking into it, you're hit by a wave of both that slightly kind of minerally sulfury smell increases, but what also increases is a fresh, damp scent of kind of growing life, which as you step into this larger cave, you realize are walls and ceilings and floors covered with soaking wet moss. That kind of you can hear little drips and splashes all around you. The little stream you're going through actually kind of gets weirdly smaller and narrower, and you think it's because rivulets of it have kind of spread off, and there's little kind of pools all the way around this cavern. It seems quite high. You can't see the roof of it, and it is open and deep enough that you can't see beyond the immediate area you've come out on.
Okay.
Well, this is just lovely.
We found a cave.
We found a hot spring.
I mean,
underneath Thistlehold.
I mean, whoever's houses are above here have just gone up in property value.
Yeah.
Ganderald is kind of like scribbling furiously, and as he does so, Master Furia is kind of kneeling down carefully on the ground and like grabbing bits of the moss and putting them into kind of a pouch at his side with sort of interested noises. Everyone else is just kind of standing around. The city guard are kind of taking their helmets off and kind of soaking a handkerchief or two in the water and using it to like wipe them down, because it's cold up in Thistlehold. It's autumn and it's a rainy autumn. Down here, especially in this area, it's actually starting to get pretty warm.
Okay. Well, I think while we're down here, we should map it.
Lap of the cavern.
Same tactic you did last time. Yep. That sounds good. So, and I'm happy for you to kind of go through this. I think what I did last time is, and if I didn't, I'm going to do it now, is we're going to ask for some either cunning or vigilant rolls, your guys' best, whichever you prefer. And I'm going to ask you guys to roll that, and basically there'll be like a feature I might mention for each success that you get, unless you get more successes than there are features, obviously. So go ahead, folks. No adjustments to the roll.
For my vigilant roll, before I roll it, can I also see if the witch site's going to do anything for me here?
Yeah, you can absolutely kind of activate your witch site if you want.
That is a success.
Wow. Wonderful.
I think that's the first time.
We'll cover that witch site in a second. Let's see who else got successes on their rolls.
I passed. Got a 7.
Okay. So that's Chris and Sam. And you know what? We don't need to check beyond that. There are 2 things I want to mention about this cavern to you. Well, 3 really, because one of them is the size of it, which I'm just going to give Elindra as agreed because of that natural one. So this cavern is about 250 meters wide, so about the same width as the actual passage you came down, and it's probably, I'd say, about 200 meters. Oh, hang on, no, hi, that doesn't work. North-south is 200 meters, east-west is 250 meters. Yeah. The trickling stream runs all the way through it, as I said, kind of like spilling over into little pools and rivulets on either side. But it leads to another wet passageway on the northeast corner of the cavern. And in addition to that, almost directly below where you came in, which is at the north west corner of the cavern, so directly south of that, in the southwest of the cavern is a dry passageway leading to the southwest. And I'm absolutely prepared to say that again for Mike, because I don't know if I said that in a confusing way or not.
No, that's all good. I've got it.
All good. He's got it. He's only gone and got it. So as far as your witch site goes, I believe the very first time you came down this sinkhole, you experienced sort of like the sense that there were kind of clouds of corruption roiling around underneath this sinkhole. Kind of, you couldn't pinpoint anything specific, and it wasn't like there was something horrible lurking just out of sight, ready to get you. It was just a pervasive sense of something is corrupted down here, and corrupted horribly. While you still have an odd, it's almost like a visual scent in the air. You get like little like spiraling, almost like clouds. Like you have, when you have like where I grew up, we call them worms in our eyes. But like like when you have like little artifacts in your eyes, and you're like looking around, kind of like that, but in a way that makes you uneasy. They're definitely weaker here than they are down where you first arrived in the sinkhole.
Okay. I will not report this back to the others because I have not yet found ways to describe that to people.
No, and indeed, it might be looked on a bit weird by the fact, seeing as the first the first Theurg of Thistlehold is here down here with you. Might not be worth saying to him that you've got witch sight.
I don't
Although
know if you
Yugaba could be interested.
That's true. I am not striking up any conversations about this revelation.
Is Yugaba still like entirely unreadable, or is there a reaction from her?
She is kind of bringing up the rear of the group and following silently, calmly, clearly paying some significant attention to kind of her surroundings, but not really sort of engaging in any way. John, I don't suppose I could have a favor for you in that just over the next couple of minutes, could you just randomly pop up some pictures of the people who are down here so we can just have them in our heads a bit? Sure. Euphrinda has stayed back at the thing, so just like I think Yugaba, Elfano, and Master Furia, I think those are the three with pictures, aren't they, who are down here with you guys. So and whenever you're ready, and we'll just mention them as and when they come up.
I don't have Yugaba's picture. I think you had hers.
I may have Yugaba's picture. I will send it to you. I believe, Stephen, you were about to say what you're doing next.
Yes. I don't know if you had observations for Steo and Ascarai, but I am...
The passageways were the observations. Sorry.
Oh, okay, cool. So I'm interested in the northeast passageway where the water runs into this place, and specifically, is that water warm and sulfurous? Is it coming in warm, or is there something in this cavern that's warming it?
So let's I can clarify that really well. That northeast passageway, the water is noticeably warmer than it was when you started walking in this. It's now kind of almost like a hot bath kind of temperature. So fairly warm and very pleasant at the moment. But definitely whatever is making this water warm is down this northeast passage for sure. And to answer your question there, John, I believe it was Yugaba, Elfano, and Master Furia that we were looking for.
I have an interest in the dry passage.
Okay. Are you going to kind of snoop around it and see what you can tell from it?
Yeah, I think we'll try it. We'll try not to split the party, and I don't want to go alone, but I'll try and survey it. Specifically, is it natural?
Absolutely. I'm more than happy for you to do that, and you can, to determine whether it's kind of natural or not, I would like you to give me a cunning roll, please.
Can I...
And you know what, you can take pluses, because you've already, like, Antom's pointed out to you why something might be natural and stuff like that, so you can take a +2 to it.
I'm also going to bully one of the Ordo Magica, who seem more geographically minded into giving me an idea as well. But I'll take that +2, and it's cunning, wasn't it?
It is cunning. And this is an image of Father Elfano, the first Theurg of Thistlehold, by the way.
I make it with a 7.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, John, can you leave them up for a bit? I don't want to go through them in just quickly in order. I just want to just rotate them every couple of minutes. Sorry, did you say you failed that roll, Chris?
No, I passed that roll.
You passed that roll. Yes, the passage to the southwest seems as natural as the rest of them. And yeah, there's Father Elfano, just so we know what he looks like.
I have a couple of questions. Mm-hmm. This like cavern, presumably it's big enough that we can't see the center of it if we've done if we've gone around the outskirt?
No, you haven't particularly seen the center of it, but you've also encountered nothing that indicates there is something at the center of it. You see what I mean? So it's absolutely, if you want to cross the cavern that way. In fact, just to speed us along, I'd say that Askarai, you can walk over the center of the cavern with a torch yourself if you want, and there is nothing at the heart of this cavern.
Okay, I probably would do that at some point. The other thing is, this is a very large cavern. Askarai's been around Thistlehold for quite a few years. Has he ever heard people talking about caverns under Thistlehold?
No.
Okay. So this is kind of a revelation to everybody, or at least to most people here.
That's an interesting thing to bring up, Askarai, and I'm going to ask you for a what do we think is a role that's kind of reading other people? Do we think that's cunning or vigilant?
We've used vigilance before. Cunning's more like when you're performing.
Yeah, I suppose
an act
so.
of cunning.
Let's go with vigilant then. And you came up with the idea, so I'm kind of, I didn't have to ask you to do it. I still think it's difficult, but I'm only going to give you a -2. I would have given you a much bigger one, but you came up with the idea, Sam. So let's give you some pluses there.
I'll need at a -2. I need a 13. So I'll roll vigilant. I got an 11, so I made it.
As you are returning to the group, you overhear Ganderold talking to Master Furio as they're kind of still gathering moss and taking notes. And you hear Ganderold, the young kind of changeling adept, and there is Master Furio. There he is in all his craggy glory. Ganderold says to him, "This does prove a few suppositions. I had no idea there was plant life down here, though."
Okay, I will take this in. I think if a moment comes up where it's just our group together, I will mention to them that it seems like the Ordo Magica are aware that something was down here, that there were caverns and passageways down here, but haven't been here.
Absolutely. I think you can probably engineer. Well, you know what? Actually, let's give me a cunning roll and keep making cunning rolls until you make it every kind of few minutes, and let me know when you make that roll, and you can get the group together and pass that information along. So I think that's
okay. I made the first one right now.
There we go. Then, so maybe people are refilling their canteens from the warm water, and you can kind of find time to separate off with the NPC with the player character group and mention this to them. Yeah.
Okay, I will do, and I'll say, I have no idea what else they may know, but certainly they seem to at least suspect that these caverns were down here.
Yeah.
As in before the attack, or?
That's my impression.
Yeah.
I would be interested to know what made them think that. I don't know if down here is the place to ask them.
Yeah, perhaps one for when we have more information about exactly what we find. Yeah. But
the water just gets hotter further upstream, by the way. Also, I think we must be quite close to the edge of the city now. I don't know how much further we want to go up that way.
Yeah, I think this is the limit. I would say, Askarai, given we want to keep communication kind of subtle, the next time you want to kind of get a group together, just give us 2 taps on whatever part of our body is closest, and we'll try and manufacture a way to make some space from the group and have a chat. No doubt, whoever wants to listen in will probably still find a way. The people here are skilled.
Yeah. How far east in total have you come from the actual sinkhole, would you say? From the calculations I gave,
I think we were 250 meters down the passage, and this cavern is another 250 meters.
And it was 100 from the screen to the east. Yeah, so 600 meters, right?
Something like that. I have a map of Thistlehold.
Oh, you're already doing what I've already done. Yes, you are certainly beyond the eastern bounds of the.
I'm definitely not measuring it accurately, but kind of eyeballing it. Like we've got to be towards
You're definitely
the edge of the city here.
You're definitely beyond it.
Okay.
You think? Yeah. So I think, as someone who lived in Thistlehold, you probably have a fairly good notion of how far the distances were, more so than us looking at it on a map.
I couldn't tell you what street we're under, but we'll have an idea about how big the city is.
Sure.
Walk around it.
Yeah. You think you're beyond the eastern walls now, for sure.
Okay.
So I think I'll try and gather. I'll break the group and try and gather Marvello and some of the others and kind of make a more official kind of statement of like, right, so this is lovely. I think we should take the dry passage south and see if that links back up with the original passage from the main cavern.
I agree. It seems like a smart thing to do.
Sure.
Plus, I'm determined to find out what's at the bottom of that well. Apart from water. No one say water.
Absolutely. And you know what? Marvello is more than happy to do this. He nods. The Auto Magic, again, they seem happy to kind of follow your guide in that, eventually, presumably all the areas here will be explored. Elfino seems to a certain degree along for the ride and just seems concerned with... He is definitely... I don't know what impressions you had of Father Elfino before this. Because he definitely was quite dour and sort of not unpleasant to you, but certainly kind of dismissive towards you. He seems to be very attentive and very quick to agree when an order is given, and very sort of, in fact, to use a quote from our older adventure, Steo, he does have a certain military bearing about him.
Ooh.
And seems, even though his rank far exceeds yours in the social strata of Thistlehold, seems more than happy to follow the lead of the people nominated as the leaders.
Maybe he's not such a bad egg after all.
Speaking of eggs, the sulfuric smell diminishes as you move to the southwest of this moss-covered cavern, and you make your way down those passages. And you know what? We could go into kind of exhaustive detail with each passage and branch off, but this one has very little about it. So I won't go into details except to say that the southwest passage continues for a very short stint of maybe 50 meters or so, opens up slightly into a smaller, wider cavern that a very quick exploration of provides no nothing of any interest whatsoever. There's a westward passage off that leads you about, I'd say, 150 meters. That then breaks out into another larger cavern, which has not much to go for it, and you're going to have to kind of eyeball these distances a bit because I'm not going into them in too much detail. And then it has another northern passage going maybe another 100 meters to the north, and it quickly becomes apparent as you stride out of this passage that runs to the north that you have emerged from the southern passageway of the very large central cavern. So you are indeed correct. There's a couple of little caves that don't have much in them down there, but that passageway from the moss room does indeed lead back to the central cavern with the sinkhole.
A squeak, maybe a squeak of quiet jubilation will come from Steo. Like, yeah, called it.
Good stuff.
This is, I guess, checking whether Alindra's sense of direction matches mine. My sense of direction says that we probably haven't gone far enough south in that.
I would say that's correct. Yes,
to get to the well, right?
To go to Antiques Plaza in the well, I would say that is absolutely correct. Yes.
Okay.
And you know what we could do at this point? Let's remove Father Elfino for now. Maybe we can have a look at Yagaba later. But you know what I think would be good right now is Mike. Let's see what this revised map looks like now, shall we? Yeah? You love it. Also, you're on mute.
It's really not in a fit state to be showing it on camera, if I'm honest.
Why do you think I've asked you?
Unsurprisingly, I didn't know what the cavern system was going to look like. So it's all scrunched up and all over the place.
That's fine. But I think everyone gets the impression, anyway, that of where the moss cavern is and this little passageway that's run back around. Everyone gets a rough impression, so I'm sure it's fine. Sorry, I won't put Mike on the spot again until later when I probably put him on the spot. So you're back in the central area now. The city guard are kind of like looking around, and you hear a couple of them grumble about it being probably lunchtime. Marvello glances over at your little group with like an eyebrow raised.
Yeah, I think that's enough wandering for the first half of the day.
Yeah, I given the choice, I prefer to eat provisions not in a cave.
Sure.
It's nice being able to see the sky.
So at least back to that top of the scree in the base of the sinkhole where there is quite a bit more light. The two Theurgs and the couple of guards there seem quite glad to see you return, and some provisions are shared out, and things are eaten. Very basic sort of rationed lunch provided by the city guard, you suspect. There is partway through the meal, there is a loud booming voice echoing down the sinkhole, which is recognizable to most of you, maybe not to Arendar. It's definitely a sergeant's voice, and you can hear a Dirac crowing at the top of the sinkhole. Captain! Anything to fucking report? Marvello kind of looks up and just howls, "Not yet!" And then kind of pauses for a second as some scree like tremors slightly and gravel slides slightly down the side of the sinkhole. He kind of stands there in silence for a moment and then shakes his head and goes back to his bread and cheese.
We find a whole flipping hot spring and he says there's nothing to report. God. What about
unless it's the source of the corruption that's created the sinkhole, and I don't think we found what we're looking for yet.
We have found some good information, I suppose.
Yeah.
How about the singing cave for our next trip?
John, I believe Aaron was about to say something.
John was about to say, while we are having lunch, is Serix drinking from his handy flask?
Oh, yes, he definitely is. He stood a little bit away from the group. He has like a chunk of cheese in one hand and he's chasing it with whatever liquor is in that flask of his with the other.
Okay, well, he doesn't seem to think this is too serious, so that's fine.
I mean, I don't know him well enough to know how much he's drinking, whether it correlates with how serious he considers the situation. I guess you know better than I do, right?
Generally, if he isn't drinking, something's very wrong.
Okay. Then we'll take it as a good sign.
It is good to know that at least in the immediate vicinity, there's nothing dangerous in those caverns, in the passageways we've been down. At least we can sort of rule those out as areas where a threat might come from, but depends where we go now. I suppose west makes the most sense if we're trying to rule out the less dangerous options first.
Just getting as much information first, I suppose.
Yeah. I guess I would have heard this singing noise in the northernmost of the two.
Yes, you did. So that is where we're striking out to next, I suppose, on the western edge of the cavern.
I think so.
Okay, well, the western edge of the cavern is probably around 200 meters from the scree pile. And if we're heading towards that northernmost passageway where Lindra heard something, it is, both of them on the west are kind of wet passages because the river, the little stream kind of splits out somewhere underneath the sinkhole mound of rubble. The passageway that you're looking at is easily the largest passageway out of this cavern, and actually has, because the stream is widening out as it's moving forwards, now almost entirely cool as it's traveling away from the source of heat to the east, and there is plenty of space to the side of the stream for everyone to walk kind of a couple abreast and keep their boots dry.
Nice.
You travel to a long winding passageway to the northwest, which is probably about, I'd say, 150 meters in length in total. And then you emerge into what seems to be a very, very, very large cavern. It expands to the north and the south and the west of you hugely, and you can see kind of the ceiling vaulting upwards beyond, way beyond the range of your torches. And the main feature of it, and we'll get into what's kind of immediately at where you emerge into this cavern in a second, but the main feature of it is that it is covered almost entirely, as far as your eyes can see, with a gentle, relatively kind of calm and still dark layer of water, a lake that spreads out ahead of you, that the stream kind of spills into, and which kind of like goes as far as the kind of the glitter and reflection of your torches can see. You're on like a very kind of slim spit of land that ranges kind of to the south of where you have emerged from in the cavern, and you suspect like maybe that other passageway off the cavern comes off like further to the south of where you are now. There's also what seems to be a larger and more extensive promontory of land to the north of you, but it's between you and that promontory is about 25 meters worth of the lake. You don't know how deep it is without a bit more investigation, but for what it's worth, you know, you are separated from that larger promontory by water.
So I'll kind of like hold my hand up and kind of not let anyone get too close to the water. Because I've been here before, and I've also read Lord of the Rings.
Can I?
I haven't been here before, but I've been under Davokar before, and I've kind of.
Yeah. Can I see how the witch site's getting on?
Yeah, I think I'll ask for another roll for it for sure.
Okay, just.
Did we determine that you don't? Do you get temporary? You do.
I
get
do
temporary
when it
corruption.
succeeds. I took one for the last time.
Yeah, I think
this
we
is
can
different.
mark an end of the scene, because I don't want to have the entire exploration be one scene. So I think lunch mark the end of a scene, so you can get rid of that temporary corruption.
Cool. Right, let's go again. And it's just it's vigilant against discreet. I don't know. Is that just unmodified for a location?
Yeah, unmodified for a location.
Okay. That's a fail.
Yeah, your kind of your witch site. I don't know. I don't want to say it tires you out, or like I think it's kind of shaky, right? It kind of comes and goes, and you can't get a grasp on it with your lack of training. Maybe we could view it as that. So you can't tell anything from that.
Okay.
Is it anyone carrying out any closer investigations of anything?
Yeah, perhaps got the longest weapon. Perhaps you could use it to see how deep this.
Poke the mystery lake.
I don't know. I think this indicates that we're at the start of the. I kind of look to the Order Magica almost for approval. The Sub-Davokar Cavern Network. And
as you look to them, you notice that Ganderald is scribbling furiously. Master Furia is stood right at the edge of the lake, and he's gazing towards the northwest. You can't see anything out there yourself, but you can see him very focused and very kind of like peering out into the darkness with like almost like a tilted head, as if he's like screwing his eyes up at something or listening for something. He seems to be perceiving or looking for something.
I kind of notice him and kind of look over and go, you should probably stay back from, and kind of that hushed whisper, that kind of hushed loud whisper voice. You should stay back from the edge, Master.
I can take care of myself.
Ascarai,
Yeah?
do you have any flaming arrows?
Unfortunately, I don't. Although perhaps with some of the supplies we have, we could make a rudimentary one.
I'd
Yeah,
just be
very easy.
interested to see how far we can get a light in that
I
direction.
must remind everyone, as the voice of caution, that there are things down here that we do not want to throw flaming arrows at.
I think probably as Steo is saying that, Aaron is going to indulge his first impulse at looking at a large, flat lake and try and skip a stone across it.
Oh my!
Sure.
Yes.
Full of a joke.
Absolutely. Yeah, sure. I think that's absolutely fine. You pick up a stone and you. Shall we make a roll just for fun to see how well you skip the stone? Why don't you give me an accurate
And
roll?
after that, accurate. Ooh. So my target is 15. I rolled a 17.
Oh,
That-
it only makes
that's-
like one or bounce before it sinks below the waves. Could you also give me a vigilant roll, please? And I'll give you a +1 because you're kind of trying to pay attention to where you're skipping the stone.
Sure, so I got a target of 6. I rolled a 16.
Okay. Does anyone think they'd be near enough to Aaron and kind of paying attention to what Aaron is doing in order to...
If someone's
Like-
chucking a stone in the lake, I'm going to pay attention, yes.
This has taken me
Yeah.
completely by surprise, so I am out.
Sure.
I'll be paying attention.
Sure.
I think
well,
I'd turn to look after I hear a stoning, but it
Yeah, sure.
depends how quickly.
Absolutely. Well, these bottom 3 then, why don't you all have a vigilant roll at, we'll say -2 though, because you're kind of only kind of, drawing attention to it after the fact.
That is a pass.
Not for me.
I've made it.
Okay, Ascarai and Elindra. What you see is obviously the skipped stone kind of disturbs the water, the relatively still sort of a gleaming surface of the dark lake. And what you see is something large moving, kind of disturbed by the stone, moving just under the surface of the lake. It's quite large and it's very pale, and you don't glimpse it for long, but what you do see looks frighteningly similar to a naked human swimming just beneath the surface.
Get out. Get out.
Can I use Beast Law to see if I know what this creature might be?
No.
Okay.
Oh, well, you know what? Oh, there's an oblique way to do this, right? Give me a Beast Law roll.
Okay. This is against. Wow, let's do it. I rolled an 8, which I think beats my cunning. It does beat my cunning.
Sure.
That-
Yeah. I'd say this creature does not look like anything you know of.
Okay.
Which is, like information, right?
Yeah.
When you say large, Matt, do you mean large like a person or large
Like a large
shark?
person. Like a
Okay.
large person.
Okay. Large like Serexatio.
Yeah.
Okay.
This isn't turning into Attack on Titan, the Symbaroum edition.
But like a pale human-like form, kind of like gliding just under the surface, kind of away. I would also say that anyone who has kind of come near the lake's edge in any form now can also make another vigilant roll for me. Unmodified.
Would that be in addition to the one I just did, or?
In addition to the one
Okay.
you just did, yeah.
I failed.
That was to notice the form under the surface of the water. This is for something else entirely.
I fail that one.
I fail.
Anton's not very good with the dark, is what I've learned.
Have we learned what he is good with?
Ouch.
Maps?
That was so cheap and so low.
Yes. Exactly what I was going for. Did anyone succeed on that one? No?
Wow.
Okay. That's fine.
Everything is fine. Yeah,
I
no,
dust my hands off.
I think when I
There's-
saw the thing moving, I'm instinctively trying to put distance between me and the water at this point.
Sure.
Aaron, the look I am giving you would probably do damage.
What? It's perfectly clear. There can't be anything under there. We'd see it
There-
moving, surely.
There's something under there.
You didn't
Where?
see that? There's a figure moving.
I think we should pull back.
Yes.
We are not equipped to handle an underground lake filled with anything, let alone the things that come out of Symbaroum.
Yeah.
Or Davokar.
Master Furia kind of turns the kind of whatever spell that's kind of drawing his attention broken, and he kind of turns around and says, yes, you're right. We should find the way onto that promontory.
Did you see the creature?
There's something moving.
Dude,
That's why you have weapons, is it not?
our weapons work better on the land. But do you know what that creature is? You're a scholar.
No. All kinds of unknown things down here, no doubt. That promontory to the north, we need to find a way onto it. Maybe there's another way round. Perhaps the North Passage. There's something to the northwest that needs investigating.
North Passage, I agree with. Fording a lake filled with some kind of horror from beneath Davokar, I do not agree with.
Well, that is why we need to go on the promontory, which goes further out into the lake.
What is it we need to investigate? I can't see anything to the past.
No, I'm sure you don't. He's kind of stalking past you all back towards the passageway leading back to the central chamber.
Look, any excuse to get out of here, come on.
Yep. Let's leave.
Yeah, fair enough.
As you leave, I'm going to roll. Well, you know what? It's been Steo who's been being the most expressive with it, so I won't roll randomly. As the group gets together to walk back towards that central passageway, Steo, you walk past Yugaba, who's kind of stood to one side, waiting for everyone to go past so she can kind of bring up the rear again. And in a very quiet, whispering voice to you, she says, "You're right to be cautious."
Thank you, milady. I was actually going to suggest that I will keep watch behind as well, because stalky, scary things underground.
Sure, that's fine. So we return to the central chamber. Furia definitely seems to want to aim towards that north passageway out of the central chamber, but what does everyone else want to do? Furia isn't completely in charge, although he does seem to be, to a certain degree, trying to take charge on this decision.
What time are we talking at? Are we in a position to swear off for the day?
Oh God, no! You're probably in the very early afternoon.
So glad I don't work for you. Wait, I do kind of. Okay. Yeah, I suppose the next step is the north.
Yeah, it's either the other
Westward.
river passage that goes to the west, or it's the north. We are going to visit all of them eventually if it helps smooth things over. Then let's go north.
Yeah, I think the other river passage was the least suspicious in our initial survey, and I'm not averse to skipping it. But the north is obviously was the source and will be the target of our investigation. Given
the scale of that lake, my assumption is that the other river passage also ends up there. It might not, but
it would seem a safe assumption.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go north.
Okay, you travel around to the north of the cavern. That north passageway is probably about 100 meters north from the scree, from the sinkhole, and it seems to be a relatively kind of open, dry passageway that leads directly north, and the group can kind of walk down it, maybe kind of a couple next to each other. So there's kind of plenty of room to make your way. As you start traveling down there, though, one thing, and I'm not even going to ask for, you know what? Let's ask for a vigilant roll to see who notices it first. But no one's going to not notice this. But if everyone can make me a vigilant roll and just pop your hands up if you succeed. We've got Sam, just Sam. Just Askarai. We're used to that with the vigilant rolls, folks. So Askarai, as you are kind of maybe near the front of the group, moving to the north, one thing immediately becomes apparent to you, and that is that these passageways, not so long in the past, have been inhabited. You start to see small scraps of material and bits of thread and rope and kind of carved wood on the floor, as if they've been kind of disturbed in a hurry, or maybe dropped, or just kind of the detritus of people living nearby.
Okay, I definitely would point this out to everyone. I mean, everyone's noticed it anyway. Can I get any sense of how long ago people were living here?
Some of these items seem fresh, for want of a better word, kind of very recent.
Okay. This could definitely be where those creatures came from. Maybe before, but maybe even after they were corrupted.
They had to get into the sinkhole somehow.
Mm. We've seen no other signs in any other passageway.
Do we think that they lived here or travelled through here?
They must have travelled through.
As you make your way forward, it's worth noting you don't kind of hear anything alarming, kind of like signs of life or anything like that. You do reach a kind of crossroads in the passageway, and this one, by now, all of you are starting to notice this kind of like vague, rubbish everywhere. A couple of like turned over crates and barrels that seem to have been emptied in a hurry at some point recently. There is now, obviously, there's the passageway further north. You've come from the south. There's also one to the east and one to the west.
So with detritus of this scale, it might be possible to figure out if the workmanship is Ambrian or Northern.
Absolutely. Why don't you give me a cunning roll to try and establish that, Steo, as you've picked up a small bit of carved wood and are just kind of like looking it over.
I pass with a 4.
To you, it seems like something made by barbarian folk. Although just the kind of little details and nuances of how it's done are kind of unfamiliar to you. That doesn't maybe mean anything. There's quite a few barbarian clans you are pretty unfamiliar with, but it's certainly not, for example, like the nearby clans like the Odavs or the others. Let me just find myself a map here. Factions, where are you? There you are. Because there's kind of there's 3 clans we've kind of encountered along our varied travels in different stories right at the moment. And those are why is this not what it says it was? Sorry folks, I'm just trying to find a map. There we go. So yeah, like the Odavs are the generally quite agreeable clan who get along well with the Ambrians. Ephanea was an Odav. There are the Carrots to the Carrots, not carrots, to the northeast. The clan Karahar, who are the ones you encountered at Cylindra's Hope. Was that what it was called? The Fever of the Hunt storyline. And also for our Fetters of Stone folks, you encountered the Zarex, who surround the Lake Volgoma to the northwest of Thistlehold. And these are probably the clans that Steo is familiar with, and it doesn't quite, the nuance is off for it to be any of those clans.
Well, there is a northerner in our midst, so I will once again kind of secrete as subtly as I can this little kind of token I picked up from the floor and take it over to Yagaba and maybe kind of just show it to her and say, doesn't look like it's from Light Davokar.
She kind of glances down, sits, and glances up. There she is, Yagaba. I would like you, Chris, to make a persuasive roll.
Okay.
Let's see how your charisma does.
Oof. And Tom! Here we go. Oh my god, it's a 19. That could have been ever so slightly worse, but that is a failure.
Yagaba makes a kind of soft, non-committal grunting noise and pockets the carving.
That's fine. That's fine.
You do think, by the way, that Anton, as a lore master, may have some insight into this, but we'll wait and see if you find something else that might be able to provoke that doesn't get pocketed by the witch.
So at the crossroads, in my mental map of this is now, if we take the path towards the east, we will re-intersect with the lake after some time.
That's very not correct, I'm afraid. The lake is to the west, not the east.
Oh, okay. So I would actually like to suggest we do a bit of reconnaissance to the east before committing to going to take a look at the west.
Okay.
I'd say like 200 meters, no further.
Yeah, seems reasonable. Maybe also to the north before we check out the lake.
Yeah. More information is better.
And if something had been living in here, it might be a good idea to check there isn't anything still living in here further up the tunnels.
Precisely.
So with that in mind, do we think we're kind of going east and then north and then west? Is that kind of the rough plan?
Yes.
Okay. The passageway to the east does not take far to resolve itself. It opens up into a relatively kind of a medium, you call it like a kind of large room, I suppose, if it was in a building, but as it is, it's a sort of medium size little cavern. This looks like, to all extents and purposes, like a combination crafting chamber, a storage room, a treasury. There's bits of what seem to be like loot of various kinds of cultural provenance scattered over the floor. It looks like most of it has maybe been grabbed and left with, but there are bits and pieces still left. There are some skins that now smell rather unpleasant, kind of strung out to dry and to cure along ropes tied to the wall. It generally seems like a room in which people went about their business and stored things. A lot, as I say, like these skins, they stink, but that's because presumably people haven't been here for at least a few days. But it's all very recent. And there's a not inconsiderable amount of stuff here.
So this looks like where they staged the invasion from.
Maybe. It was a big group, though. You couldn't stage that many people from one room.
Well, not the people physically, but I mean...
I'm also perhaps
logistics.
humoring the concept of maybe some kind of raiding gang, if there was a route to the surface.
Well, let's investigate and see what we find.
Yeah.
You're going to have a closer look around the room and dig around. Yeah, absolutely. Why doesn't everyone give me a vigilant roll, and then I will roll to see what we find. So that looks like a success from Mike, a success from Steo. Let's have a bit of a roll on what we do here. And I guess I have to roll to see who goes first out of that as well. Steo, you find a pouch on the ground scattered among various like furs and skins, a couple of like quite well crafted, but so kind of not in particularly good repair, sort of skinning knives and things like that. Plenty of little cultural items that maybe Anton could do something with. But also, in addition to that, you find a pouch that has, with a quick roll, it has 8 thala in it. It is thala, Ambrian thala, minted, and stamped with Thistlehold's stamp.
Definitely. Murder hobo in me would obviously put that in my pocket and use it to buy more weapons, but I will kind of bring that to everyone's attention and go, this is local coin. This is not an invading army. This is a staging post.
Or individuals who are Umbrian but got corrupted.
Potentially.
As for what Anton finds, you find, my friend, in the pocket of what seems to be a ragged and disheveled fur-lined coat that's maybe been taken off someone. It's got quite a bit of very old dried blood on it. You find 21 shillings tucked into the pockets of that. And also, the two of you who made your vigilant rolls, could you give me another vigilant roll at -3, please? Ooh.
That's a success.
How did you do, Mike?
Yeah, made it.
Well, shit, because you're both looking for one thing. Let's say that as Anton is like kind of looking over this fur coat, Steo, you're kind of maybe standing over and kind of seeing if he's seeing. Maybe you've come over with one of those like skinning knives or something to maybe see what Anton could have a look at with that, or just stab him. Yeah. And you notice what seems to be a little kind of like sewn up edge in that fur coat that doesn't look like the stitching on the rest of it. Anton, you notice it as well. And when opened, what is revealed is a small but very well carved out and adorned brooch with a red gemstone in it. It looks rather valuable.
Okay. I think I will secrete that about my person with some.
Well, I think to be fair, Anton's probably closest to it if he wants to do something with it first.
And,
unfortunately, he's an honest soul, and I'm concerned he might tell everyone.
Well, I think I'd like to investigate it and look a little bit closer at it before you secure that about your person, Steo.
Sure. There's not an awful lot to tell about it. It looks to be Ambrian jewelry.
Okay.
But it doesn't have a jeweler's mark or anything like that on it. So
okay, is it worth using Lawmaster on, or is that about all?
No, it's very basic. You know,
Okay.
It's not that interesting. But Steo did come over with some items if you want to have a look at things that appear to be made by these people.
Yeah, Steo, pass me one of those knives. I'll just take a close look.
Just gonna stab you back.
Hilt first.
I love the level of trust that exists. We've been doing this for 14 months.
Yeah. Look at my gemstone, will you? Go ahead and give me a Lawmaster cunning roll on this, please.
He just wants to make sure you don't botch and like accidentally stab him.
Well, I didn't make the Lawmaster roll, so getting stabbed wasn't worth it.
Good stuff. Yeah, you don't know it. It looks vaguely barbarian in make, but beyond that, you can't pin anything down. Sorry, carry on. Is anyone else going to... This seems to be all you can really find from this area.
Yeah, I think we move on then.
Yeah.
And the next plan was to go to the north, I believe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. You find yourself traveling along a kind of longer passageway, and incidentally, this crossroads is about 100 meters north from the central cavern. You travel another 100 meters north from this this crossroads you found yourself at, and you find yourself at. It's kind of the passageway is still going straight, but basically there are a couple of nooks that seem to have been carved by hand into either side of the passageway. They have small racks of quite functional but basic looking weapons in there, and a couple of carved stools, and sort of rudimentary small mirrors have been set up near the stools facing to the north. Steo, I'm going to have you make the first roll for Steo and Alindra. In fact, I'm going to have you make the first roll for this. Can you give me a cunning roll at +1, please?
Ooh, I need 11. I got an 11.
Yeah. synchronized 11s. The stools are the real giveaway here, folks. It's a guard post. And it's keeping guard to the north.
Keeping guard to the north.
Yes, it is keeping watch for something coming from the north. The mirrors are set to reflect down that passageway to the north.
The geometry of this place and the tactical configuration of it. I'm actually going to cast a kind of eye over to guard captain friend and just kind of knowing nod and confused look.
Yeah, he has recognized it too, and he looks kind of puzzled at this notion. Anton, I'm happy for you to carry on rolling for cultural objects of these people to try and find out a bit more about them. But I'd like them to be new kinds of cultural objects every time. I think a skinning knife is sufficiently different from like a battle axe or something, like a fighting axe that is leant against the wall here. So I think I'm happy for you to do it for this weapon if you want. So go ahead and give me a cunning roll for that if Anton wants to look at it. If you don't, that's fine.
Yeah, I make it.
Okay. You take a look at it, and something occurs to you. You take a closer look. You look at some of the rudimentary carvings down at the base of the axe. You look over like various bits and pieces, and everything starts to click together in your head a little bit. And at first, you're a bit puzzled, and then a bit reluctant to draw the conclusions you're coming to. You have seen objects carved like this before with these kind of designs, and it is designs of a barbarian clan. A barbarian clan wiped out 10 to 15 years ago. Upon first arriving in Ambria, the Ambrians had very hostile dealings with the Jezite clan. Their dead leader Halaban is where Halaban's ring is named after in Thistlehold. Indaros and Thistlehold were both places of theirs, and Castor, I think. And the Ambrians essentially rolled over the land that is now Ambria and wiped them out. Or you thought you did.
Okay.
And to be clear, this stuff is less than 15 years old, right? Like this is
recent. Very much so, yes.
Oh, Prios. Okay. This isn't good. I think that some of these items and these weapons may be from the Jezite clan. The carvings look very similar.
Marvello kind of wrinkles his brow and says, "But we killed them all, didn't we? They resisted us, and we had to finish the job." That's really what I was told.
Kill all of the people, though.
Did people come down into these caverns and passageways to finish the job?
Anton, you said that the abominations that came out of the sinkhole said something while they were attacking.
They did. They made reference to Halaban, to Eleanor. I got that right?
Yeah. Halaban was the final chieftain of the Jezites.
Yeah.
You thought.
For Halaban, for Eleanor. Vengeance tastes like human flesh, I think was the phrase.
You've a good memory, Lindra.
It was a very memorable phrase.
A sharp and voice accustomed to being listened to and to teaching echoes from the passageway just behind you as Furia is kind of like scattering some weapons left on the floor with his foot. And he says, "Down here, for years, becoming something else. And the thing that changed them is yet ahead of us, I think. We must investigate."
Okay.
someone should take some of these artifacts and weapons back to the surface for further examination.
Let's do that on the way out. I think we have one last date with this cursed underground lake, which has drawn so much interest.
The passageway continues to the north, by the way, beyond where you can see. And from where you can see, it seems to maybe spread out into a larger cavern.
So I
But there is also the west of the crossroads. There's also further to the east of the moss room, which we haven't investigated. So, yeah.
The guard post.
Mm-hmm.
So it's chairs facing north up the passageway.
I mean, they're just stools. They're not particularly facing.
Okay.
The mirrors seem to be placed so that wherever you're sitting in these little nooks, you can see to the north.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to get a sense of is, does this look like a place where a couple of guards would sit, and something comes toddling down the passageway, and they say, hello, password, please? Or does this look fortified? Like, are these defending against the north? I
mean, it would be a point of defense, I suppose, but it looks more like a general guard post for keeping an eye out. Like, there is definitely, with any guard post, there's a sense of this could be a place where you get a warning if there was an attack coming.
Sure, but there's not like a barricade or...
No, there's nothing like that. No.
So my theory is that the reason the guards look that way is because down that path is the only way out of the cave network that hasn't been created by whatever abomination was wrought down here.
Yeah, that way is, I think, probably not very far that way is the forest.
I think we should at least take a look in that cavern just to get some kind of sense of how big it is and what is there before we head.
I'll actually defer to Furia the thing. So which are you more interested in then, the soaked cavern or the potential source of these abominations?
I think it all needs investigating. But I would, I suppose, rather know what was at our back before we head to the heart of this thing.
Yes, and I prefer putting an end to things before opening new ones myself. So let's go take a look at the lake then.
Oh, that's the opposite of what he meant.
Was it? Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I think he meant let's make sure that this northern passageway is clear before. Like, he's interested in, the lake is his final destination. Right?
That is also not what he meant.
Okay.
I think although I think he, I'm not sure you're aware yet whether the western part of the crossroads or the north here is what eventually leads to the lake. I think what he meant is the moss chamber.
Okay.
Something at your back while you're that's closer to the sinkhole and potentially could interfere with you getting out before. I think that's the rationale he seems to be presenting.
So the moss chamber is the first chamber we discovered with the warm water coming out of it.
Correct. And there was a further passage to the east of it which you didn't go down. Ooh, Mike's got his stuff.
It's a little bit more. Blimey, it's the light isn't so good here.
It isn't, but Mike, I can already see, mate. That is literally pretty spot on.
That's
okay,
exactly
so that's where we came down. We
Yeah.
first went over here to the second. This was the mossy chamber here, and then we looped back around here to the south, came back up, and now we're buggering around up here at the crossroads.
Yeah.
And I think that we're talking about this hot, wet.
That is where Furia is absolutely
passageway.
talking about.
Yeah.
He seems to consider that at his back while he's trying to pay attention forwards. Yes. And you've got the lake right there as well, which is the furthest thing over to the west. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a trek back if we do it. Yeah.
It's entirely up to you. He's not telling you. He's offering his judgment. That's all. He seems to be. He's definitely less willing to take your leadership than Elfano and Marvello, but he's deferring.
Okay. I mean, it's a good point. That is the last untrod path. So if we seal that one off, then that's the end of it. It's a trek back, though.
I didn't realize we had some sort of timeline to stick to.
That goes both ways. We don't necessarily need to jog our way through the caverns.
I mean, given the choice, I would rather spend the night in a tavern than down here. But I don't know how much of this we're going to get covered before the light fails.
Right.
I'm quite happy to go to the cavern, which is a little bit warmer and a little bit further away from the lake cavern. So,
Yeah, and maybe if we go away long enough, whatever Aaron skimmed into life there will forgive our trespass.
What's Aaron and Askarai's take on this?
We're close enough to this northern cavern that we can already see it. I don't see a reason to not at least take a look at what it is before we double back. It would take us a minute, and we'd have a much better sense of what is up here.
Yeah,
I agree with Ascarai.
I'm inclined to sweep this cavern and see if there's anything in here while we're here. Then whether we go to the lake or the spring. I mean, I'm more worried about what's in the lake cavern, which means that I'm more inclined to want to go there first. Evidently, Furia feels differently.
That's fine. I think your group, your majority there is for at least investigating this northern cave to the north of the guard post, and you can absolutely do so. You emerge out into like a larger cavern. You hear the sounds of running water, definitely more active running water ahead of you than further down where it's presumably coming out from the spring. And quite soon the cavern opens up for you, and you know what? You find a couple of points where torches have been driven into the ground. Clearly, this was a cavern where time was spent quite a lot by presumably these descendants, 10 or 15 years, the remnants of the Jezite clan down here. And if you want, you can light these torches and get quite a quick impression of this cavern, or you can make your way around in a cautious and more stealthy fashion like you have in the other ones. It's up to you.
I'm still for caution.
I presume this conversation is moot, and Arendar has already started to light the torches.
Luckily for everyone, I don't have a torch because I use both hands for my weapons, so I'm keeping them free.
So you're just dousing these torches in naphtha and kind of throwing. No. So, yeah, that's absolutely fine. Why don't we have a vigilant roll from everyone? And you know what? I'm going to give you all a +1 to it because you kind of feel like your old hands at mapping out these caverns now. And yeah, you're getting kind of used to the rhythm of this.
Wow. It's been a good night for Steo.
Did anyone else get vigilant successes? No,
Yeah.
Good lord. Okay. So you make your way around the cavern, and what you detect essentially is that there is some kind of river moving through it. You get the sense that there's water towards the center of the cavern. That little river comes from a wet passageway to the very north of this cave, which is probably about 200 meters north-south and maybe about 100 meters east-west. And there is also another exit. There's one exit to the south leading down back where you've come from, and there is another exit to the southwest of it, which is also a wet passageway that leads down to the southwest. If any of you had to guess about leading towards the lake, it would be that latter one. There's some kind of dog explosion happening outside my house.
Dog explosion. Would anyone like to start a band? it's going to take us a while to map this place out properly, it being quite large.
Yes, we can do that if you like. I was mainly interested in just seeing whether there was anything lurking here just beyond the perimeter of the encampment. Like if there's not anything that we're obviously going to encounter in this cavern, we can assume that this just goes north, into Dabakar, under Dabakar.
I think now is a good time to double back and investigate either the moss cavern or the lake, whichever people prefer, really.
I mean, I think we're closer to the lake. I'm not really sure I follow the argument for not going back to the lake. Furia was fairly insistent on trying to find a way to that promontory, and now wants to go to the other cavern.
I don't think he's being inconsistent. He's saying that you need to go forward and find it. But he's giving the reason that he feels that, like, if you leave something unknown behind you near the sinkhole and near those vulnerable Theurgs and the guard back there at your base camp, then you might end up in a situation where, you have something at your back on one side and the source of this corruption on the other side. I think that's his reasoning.
I mean, we could be attacked right now from the north. From the
absolutely. This isn't the games master telling you to do something subtly. This is Furia's opinion.
I'm this is Anton expressing his his thoughts now.
Friends, we are not in a rush to do any of this, and now that Furia has mentioned it, I would also like to get a complete picture before we go into the place where we know there is something scuttling beneath the waters. I know it's an extra trek, but I've come around to it.
Yeah. Well, am I right in thinking that was the direction I heard the rustling noise from?
It was, yes.
I think it seems as good a way as any. I wouldn't mind going to the lake, but if the master is more concerned about this moss cavern, then
I think the lake is something that can easily wait until tomorrow.
Fine.
It's worth noting, by the way, you're not stuck down the sinkhole. If you want to come out overnight, you can go back up to Thistlehold,
That's 100% the plan.
Okay, if we're doing one more thing today, let's go explore northwest beyond the mossy cavern. Then let's call it a day. It's psychological because we're underground, but I would far rather be underground at that lake in the daytime than in the nighttime. So that is a job for tomorrow.
There is obviously, like most of the people, just kind of listen into your little discussions, but there is a general murmur of assent on this, missed only out maybe by Yagaba and Furia himself, who, not that he doesn't disagree, you're going where he thinks you should go, but he doesn't seem to care about the notion of like being down here, about when you go to the lake or whatever. But you make your way kind of back towards that central area. You probably, I would imagine, by that scree pile by the sinkhole, you probably drop off back there and maybe grab a bite to eat or something, and kind of freshen up your water. Again, the Theurgs and the guards seem pretty happy to see you. And in fact, why don't you all give me persuasive rolls, not necessarily for getting information out of them, but just to see which of you have like a friendly face to share something with.
I make it.
Okay. Nope. In that case, let's have one of the other Theurgs do it. That makes sense, right? One of the other Theurgs, a young lady who you think you've seen around the Sun Temple a couple of times, takes a couple of steps forward as you come to freshen up. They've got little water barrels so you can drink from them and maybe scrub your faces a little bit because there's a lot of dust and gravel and stuff, so you're feeling a little raw and dry. And as you do so, she steps forward and says, Father Anton, isn't it?
That's right, sister.
Yes, I just thought I'd mention, the others thought I was imagining things, but I really did think I heard some kind of sound off to the east there.
Over to the east. Well, that happens to be direction that we are going to be heading off into, and you're not the first member of the party to hear something.
A scraping, maybe a rustling noise, like some kind of animal moving around.
That's very, very useful information, and thank you for sharing that with me.
Yes, I didn't want to say it to the first Theurg lest I look foolish, but yes.
Yes, do not worry. We'll be heading in that direction next, and we'll investigate anything. And I'm sure that there's no reason to be too concerned.
Wonderful, wonderful. She does not look reassured.
Yeah, and Anton doesn't feel that reassured either.
Okay, are we making our way back down for the last, the last investigation of today down in the sinkhole? You make your way to the east. You already know your way there. You make your way down the wet passage and find yourself in that kind of damp, mossy cavern again, and you find yourself at that northwestern passage, which is kind of sort of a deeper and more harshly running stream than any of the other kind of elements of this little rather gentle and rambling one that you've been to so far. And as I said, underfoot it's like a hot bath as you trudge your way along a passageway that leads you about 200 meters gently to the east. By the end of it, that water's starting to get a little bit uncomfortably hot. To the point, in fact, where could I perhaps have a... Oh, that's interesting. What kind of stat might we use to resist that kind of thing? Probably...
Resolute?
I'm going to go with strong. So can we have a strong roll from everyone, please, to determine how they might be dealing with this? Thumbs up from Steo and Aaron.
Just
And so everyone make their strong rolls. Good Lord. That's unusual. Definitely a couple of the guards and maybe Ganderold as well are kind of like kind of struggling and thrashing and trying to make their way as fast as possible through it. Maybe getting kind of slight scalding on their shins and their ankles as they make their way forwards. And this passage winds slightly, and as it moves forward, it's almost maybe you start to feel like you're perhaps to a certain degree imagining a sort of a greater density and cloudiness to the air until you emerge in what seems to be yet another large cavern, which seems to mainly run north to south. The stream under your feet runs off further to the south, perhaps to its source. You can hear in the near distance a kind of popping, gurgling, bubbling sound. And this cavern is not only covered in the moss the previous one was, but also rocky walls glittering softly from fluorescent algae, and a great swath of steam kind of draped over everywhere that you can see. Visibility in here is a lot better because of that algae. Yeah.
Just remembering my wonderful time in Castor, were lindworms warm?
I'm not really sure that there's any hard and fast rule about lindworms in that fashion. I'd say give me a cunning roll at -5.
Oof. 6. 13 is not a pass.
No, nothing really occurs to you.
Just looking out for my pal Askarai and his very angry bait cloak.
Yes, lindworm cloak.
So there's no. Is there anything around that looks like it might be the source of the heat?
There is. I mean, there is the bubbling and gurgling noise in the near distance to the south, which certainly could be investigated. But there's nothing immediately around you to suggest that. No, the actual water coming down this stream that's running to the north now, kind of towards you where you've emerged into this chamber, is sort of, it has steam rising visibly from it.
Yeah.
Is the visibility good enough that we can see the whole?
No,
cavern?
no.
Just slightly better than.
It's just, you can see more than like 5 meters in front of you.
Yeah.
And everything has this odd kind of like maybe slightly purplish, pinkish cast from this fluorescent algae dotted around the walls.
Are we still stood in ankle deep hot water, or
no? There's
that?
Plenty of room. This stream is just central to the chamber, and there's plenty of room and kind of moss covered rock to stand on either side of it now. Thankfully, because it's really far too warm to stand in.
Yeah, so I'd like to explore the gurgling noise to the south.
Yeah.
That
I'm going
seems
to
very reasonable.
conspicuously ready my weapon because I think I've heard enough about the scuttling and scraping noises to be suspicious at this stage.
I'm also going to cast Blessed Shield.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Done.
I will draw my sword then in that case.
Absolutely. The group starts to kind of stalk their way to the south. I think it's safe to say all are like, your companions kind of see your preparations in this way and also kind of like gently try and draw their weapons. Anton, you're walking alongside Father Elfino and you kind of glance over at him and see that he also has raised some kind of arcane protection over himself, which is sort of, he's not like showing off or anything, but it's kind of glittering and sunspotting and gently kind of undulating sparks coming off it in a manner which does somewhat outstrip yours. There's a reason. Evidently, he's the first Theurg, and he has like a rather wicked-looking sort of long-hafted axe drawn, and his pacing forward in quite a cautious manner. Can everyone please roll me vigilant, and I will tell you in 1 second what the modifier will be. The modifier will be -5.
I rolled a 1.
Oof.
I passed.
Lovely.
Failed.
No from Aaron. Is that a no from Steo as well? Oh, it's a yes. It's a yes from no. Yes, no.
It is
So it's
definitely a
Anton.
no.
Yes, it's a no.
It's Anton and Lindra, and Anton got a 1. As you're moving forwards, obviously it feels like everyone is keeping a very clear eye out on their surroundings. And as you're moving forwards, Elindra and Anton, you are rewarded for this considerably. Elindra, you notice some kind of motion off to the left of you as something kind of quite large seems to be heaving itself between groups of rocks and kind of moss-covered scenery and kind of round to the side, and you detect a kind of the sound of like some rustling and scraping as it moves around. Anton, you spot the same thing, and not only that, you spot light glinting off pale scales. Ahead of you, with just a few more steps, is the cavern kind of opens up further, and there's a rather large surface of water ahead of you. That hot spring that you suspected was at the source of this is indeed here. It is bubbling and gurgling over, and a great roil of steam is coming off it, and it seems to be going all the way back. The fluorescent algae is growing over the roof of it even more so, and you can see a far side of the cavern where the far wall seems to slip down and the hot spring kind of just comes up against it, and presumably the hot spring goes down deeper into maybe a submerged part of the cavern system. Either way, Anton and Elindra, I'm assuming you are going to make it clear that you have seen something.
Yep, call the alarm.
You tell me how you do that. Anton, you rolled better, so why don't you get your first dibs on how you express this?
I'm just gonna say in a voice that would be loud enough to carry but not a yell, there's something moving over there, and I'll point in the direction that I saw it. It's big.
Absolutely.
I don't think I'm going to mention the scales because I think that's the level of detail.
But you did mention the scales. You said it was big.
I
appreciate
that hurt.
Good.
Physical pain.
Yeah, I'd planned to do similar, but I planned to say there's something moving over there with a point, and it's big with a facial expression, and not use words. But
Sure.
we've done it now.
So we, as the cry goes out, Marvello gives a very well rehearsed shout of "Where the beasts? Circle around the scribes!" and kind of steps forward. The city guard kind of come to attention and step out in a circle. Elfano joins them, as does Furia. It's essentially just Ganderald in the middle, kind of like looking around. Serix Atio has like spotted the you can now see multiple forms like moving around. There's a low hissing sound, which at first you described to the spring, but now is evidently coming from these creatures, these large lizard-like forms as they're kind of emerging from these moss-covered rocks towards you. And Yugaba is kind of also kind of working some kind of mysticism, her hands like flowing through the air and almost seeming to leave like traces of her hands and her arms behind her as she is carving something out of reality. On that, Serix Atio steps to the fore, knocks back what is evidently the last of his liquor, crushes the like soft metal of his drinking kind of vessel in one hand, tosses it to one side, hefts his greatsword, and just shouts, "All right, time for fucking blood!" and takes a step forward towards the beasts. And I think we're a little bit early, but I think I'll wrap it up there because we ain't going to finish a Symbaroum combat in 15 minutes. So there we go. If you have any comments or questions in the chat, please wing them in there and we'll pop them up and respond to them for you here, like the responsible streamers we are. We have a few new followers this week, I suspect. Johnny may have already mentioned you folks on the Monday stream, but I'll do it as well. Get a double shout out. Who else can you say that about? Maybe some people. So we've had, from the last 7 days or so, we've had Florus 1976, SJ2400, Gun Bunny Fufu, which is an amazing name, Jason MD 2020, Sapphire Steel, who we know from Discord, Luna Lesh, and we've also had a Prime subscribe from Charlie Octogirl, who's been with us from pretty much the goddamn beginning. So thank you very much, Charlie. So yeah, promo stuff, links down below. You're watching this on Twitch or on YouTube. Check out the other, please do. If you're watching us live on Twitch, that's wonderful. And if you're watching us on YouTube, there's a whole raft of VODs over there, all of our series, all of our one-shots for you to enjoy. Please do check them both out. There's links to our social media. We've got Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and all that usual horrible stuff. Please join us on those hell sites. We have a Discord, which is building a nice little community. Feel free to come and join us on that and talk to us about mostly role-playing things, but not all role-playing things. And we've got a Patreon where we offer some treats in return for extra support. We run 3 weekly shows here on Twitch, each of them starting at 8 o'clock p.m. GMT. Mondays is Johnny's Crew with Shadows of Esterin. Wednesdays is this, Symbaroum. And tomorrow, that's Thursday, is our relatively new, ambitious, multi-system World of Darkness anthology series. We're only a couple of episodes into it, so if you start now, you could definitely catch up by watching the first 2 and then join us for the 3rd tomorrow if you wanted, where we're currently playing Vampire the Masquerade. We're about halfway through that first story arc. We also run one-shots on the first Saturday of every month. There's a bunch of them waiting over on YouTube if you want to watch the ones from up to this point in the year. We just held a poll to determine which one people wanted a sequel to for December, and Alien came in first. So absolutely. So on Sunday the 5th of December, we'll be running a one-shot of Alien as a sequel to the previous one. I'll be GMing that, and we'll have the original crew from that involved, which are, and let me try and remember, John, I think, is the only Symbaroum person who's in that. And then we had Justin, Pierre, Alex, and it's the only thing Alex has done so far, I think, with us, and Steve are the other crew members, the other players from that. Maybe, am I missing someone?
I feel like there were 5 of us.
I feel like there were 5 of you. Didn't I say
Me,
Alex,
Justin.
Steve, you, Justin, Pierre? That's 5.
Oh yeah.
There we go.
So it wasn't the
I
other
win.
one that we kind of bricked into the wall after the.
Yeah, we don't talk about Erasmus. So, yeah, there we go. What have we got in chat? Steve's just saying, no, Chris. It could have been about anything, honestly.
It's actually applicable in almost all circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm assuming it was the scale pun.
I think it was.
Yeah, of course. Of course it was. Let's move on from that.
We've got some nice thank yous from Lord Malice.
Malice, always good to see you. Thank you.
And Sauerkraut Kid.
Thank you, Sauerkraut Kid. A new face, but a welcome one. Or newish. I know you've been in stuff before. Anything else?
Fantastic commentary from Mike.
Hot Beef Trauma, the best name of all time, as everyone knows. Dodgy looking water in a Telltale story, and Tom starts to drink it. Yeah, probably. Or Ascarai fires an arrow at it.
I mean, I suggested the arrow, but
Yeah. Maybe you should have tried to skip the arrow across the surface of the lake.
That would have been cool. You probably would have managed it.
I think the rock did most of what I was hoping the flaming arrow would do.
Yeah. Certainly illuminated matters in a way.
Yeah. It highlighted my suspicion that the lake was not a place to go swimming.
Yeah, absolutely. We got anything else, John?
For context of that, it's because Aaron, I took the flaw of impulsive, which is basically if I say something, or if I say I can do something, I can't take it back without spending an experience point. And I've never used it because I'm a very cautious player and I don't tend to just blurt stuff out. So with this one, I was like, that was the first thought that occurred to me, and that would be ridiculous. So let's do it.
Oh my god.
Yep, that's fair.
Why not? What else we got?
Oh, we've just got the fantastic euphemisms for our tunnels.
Moist tunnels from Electro Druid, yes.
We've got hot wet passages. Oh, there was another one. There we go.
The wet tubes. Indeed, the wet tubes.
They were one of the best bands in the early noughties for my
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Damp pipes.
That's no more games in caves. This is it. Just normal above ground spooky forest, please.
Yeah, on that horribly grim note, let's wrap up the stream there. Thank you for everyone for watching. Thank you to my wonderful players, and we will see you next week for more Symbaroum next Wednesday. Take care, folks. Bye bye.